ready to begin the curriculum committee meeting for Tuesday, May 12th.
Thank you. Very pleased to be here tonight and give the board an update on one of their priorities for this year, which was really, working on AI, both in the idea of literacy and building literacy with our students, but also really looking at some of the things that students need to be aware of right away. So I have an incredible team here tonight to share with you the good work of the district. And I want to just introduce them. They're going to bring me through an incredibly comprehensive update. And I just have to point out, like, we adopted AI as a literacy in October, and here we are in May. And so all of that is happening in that short time, thanks to awesome hard work and leadership. So I just wanted to start. Michelle, why don't you start with your name and title?
Okay. Michelle Horn, Curriculum Lead, K-12.
Dawn Fiorelli, Library Coordinator, K-12.
I'm Paige Przybylski, I'm the Polson Media Specialist.
And so pleased to have you all here. Thank you. So I'm going to have them take it away.
So I want to start by just saying I'm very grateful and thankful for both Dawn and Paige, because as you know, AI literacy, we just adopted it in October. And it's been quite a journey throughout this school year. I was trying to think, when did we start? Well, we started in the summer with that group that Gail pulled together, kind of looking at all the standards and pulling that together to get us to this point. And then it was, what are we going to do? Well, we decided to start with advisory. And so both Paige and Dawn, we were lucky enough to have on board for help with the advisory lessons that we created. But then we started thinking about what purpose, some of the other things. There's so many lessons that we can do involving AI. So Dawn has been wonderful at sharing, and Paige, with so many different resources they get through their own library feed related to AI. But combing through those things can be overwhelming.
And where do we put that?
And sometimes super gratifying to say, oh, wow, we are on the right track. More than not, we get these things and we read them and we're like, yes, we're doing great things for our students.
Yeah.
So, and AI, it's ever changing. It's coming at us at a rapid pace. We're very grateful to have both Matt Mervis and Liz Rade from EdAdvance helping and informing our work, which has been super wonderful for all of us. But you'll see a very distinct approach in both of the buildings. At Polson, Paige has really worked to incorporate these lessons directly into the curriculum that we have existing. And she's going to share that in a minute. I don't want to give away all her secrets. And then at Daniel Hand, Dawn and I sat around the table for a long time, a lot of hours, and started thinking like, well, there's so many courses and so many electives. Where do we start? It feels just so big right now. So what we thought was, there are lessons that, regardless if you're a history teacher or an English teacher, that all students might need. Like, for instance, a disclosure statement saying that I've used AI and I need to disclose that in a paper that I'm writing. Both English and social studies can be using that lesson. So rather than creating these individual, lessons that belong in specific units, we created more of these broad teacher resources that can be used. And Dawn's been communicating this work out in coordinators meetings so that it's getting spread throughout the building. And I think through that work, it's starting to grow a little bit and catch on, and I think it's becoming more useful to teachers. So I don't want to give away all the secrets, but I'll turn it over to them. They can go into more of the detail of what that looks like. They'll both start with the work that we've done already in advisory and then move into the more of the LMC piece of it. So, Paige.
So in advisory, we really wanted to start addressing just the foundations of it. What is AI? What misconceptions we can clear up that our students are coming to us with. Like, there's no all-knowing being on the other end of this, and there's not a human on the other side of that screen, which can be confusing for them. And also start delving into risks, especially on the social emotional side of things for our students. So we hit the ground running in AI and we split it into two parts. So the first part took place March 19th. The second part took place April 2nd. In our March 19th advisory, and this is school-wide, so this is grades 6 through 8, all receiving the same lesson this year. we started with what is AI and machine learning? How is it generating its information? It's pulling from all areas of the internet, and they know from other classes that I teach with them that we can't always trust everything we see on the internet, right? So we started with some risks like misinformation as well as hallucinations. Sometimes AI is really great at making information sound like it's accurate, and it might have some details correct, but not necessarily the full picture. It might fill in gaps with what it thinks is correct. So we spent some time, we looked at some of the videos that Matt Mervis shared with us from EdAdvance that were really great for sparking discussion, I would say, with our students. And then we'd also work through some activities. So the one that you're seeing on the screen is an example of one of those activities. It was just a true false handout that grew from our work on misinformation and hallucinations. I'm gonna really test my eyesight here, but that last one, just to give you an example, AI can sometimes mix real facts with made up details, okay? Where do you think it lands, true, false? There's also one on what AI makes up all false information and it's called a hallucination. So we have a similar vocabulary, we're using common language, right? And we spent time debriefing answers to that. In part two, we wanted to dive a little more deeply into risks. So we addressed deepfakes and chatbots, and specifically relying on chatbots for friendship or for mental health advice. And some of the problems with that, some of the missed opportunities there, and also what new problems can arise from that in a very middle grade friendly way. So we spent time debriefing that. And that was great because it kind of gave us this starting point for all 3 grade levels. And then I started layering in organically some AI literacy instruction into grade-wide pre-existing lessons. So if you go to the next slide, it gives you an idea of where I started finding places to layer in. So grade 6, for example, they do a unit in social studies about the spread of information. They start with how information used to spread long ago. They study the Silk Road, etc. So I asked if I could be a part of that unit and almost work as like a bookend. So you've spent the last 6 to 8 weeks studying how information used to spread. Let's take a look at how information spreads now. What are our pluses and minuses here of that instant spread of information? And within that lesson, I was able to address algorithms, how they're functioning to show you the information that you're seeing, as well as filter bubbles, okay? How are those algorithms now preventing you from seeing other things that you might be interested in, or other viewpoints that might come into play? And we were able at that point to dig a little more deeply into misinformation, as well as deepfakes. If you look at that slide right there in the corner, that just gives you an example. We ended with a group quiz. I told them it was for their library grade, and then they all panic, and I'm like, there is no library grade. It's fun for me to just have to put that in there, and then they can answer as a group, right? So this just gives you an example of one of the questions we ended with. Like I would give them a scenario and then they would choose the proper course of action based on our work. So you see an image of a local politician doing something shocking on social media. In order to check if it's real or a deep fake, your best course of action is to A, check the fingers and hands, B, check the credibility of the account posting it and do a reverse image search, or C, look for a strange texture. Earlier in the lesson, we had talked about different signals that something might be a deep fake, but we also talked about how over time deepfakes are going to get more and more convincing, okay? We can't just rely on, oh, well, the hand looks strange for the rest of our lives. And we talked about really kind of backwards searching where the image came from. And I had actually shown them, I should have included it, but there was a viral image of a shark swimming down a highway in Texas after Hurricane Harvey. And we talked about that and the instant spread of that, and how if you do a Google reverse image search, it gives you detailed information about how that image first surfaced on the internet, that it was actually a hoax, okay? So that they could be employing those skills themselves before they're passing information on to others. So that was grade 6, we had fun with that. Grade 7, I go in with the guidance counselors actually at each grade level and deliver a lesson each year. We've sort of scaffolded it so that in 6th grade, we address digital safety, physical and emotional. 7th grade, we discuss navigating digital dynamics. So that's a lot of stuff with, oh, my friends are in a group chat, I got left out, like that kind of angle of it. And then in 8th grade, we talk about their digital footprint, especially as they look ahead to heading to Hand or wherever their studies take them. So just to give you an example, at the 7th grade level, we dove a little more deeply into chatbots and our mental health and talked more specifically. It was nice to kind of have that background from advisory and talk a little bit more in detail about why we shouldn't be relying on chatbots to help us with our struggles. We were able to reiterate that there are so many trusted adults in this building that are here for you and care about your health, your mental health. And also talk about some of the missed opportunities. If you're gonna vent about how stressed you are, you can do that with a chatbot, but if you do that with a friend on the bus, then maybe that friend also is feeling the same way. Maybe you decide you're gonna study together, or maybe you decide you're gonna both get a ride to the chorus concert together, right? So then it's a missed opportunity if you're choosing the internet over a friend. And then in 8th grade, so this is more looking ahead. Right now, Gemini is turned off at the middle grade level. But once we start preparing to introduce the students themselves generating prompts and using AI, we're looking for purposeful, meaningful uses of doing that, ethical uses. And one idea that I've spoken to the social studies 8th grade teachers about, moving ahead with their revised curriculum, they're going to be studying President Andrew Jackson, I think fairly early in the year, maybe early winter. And they're going to end up debating whether or not they felt he was a strong leader or a tyrant. So I was talking to them about maybe, hey, here could be an opportunity to teach students how to generate and refine AI prompts and cite those prompts, because we want them citing any work that's not coming from our brain. And almost use AI as a debate partner. So you feel you're pretty prepared to argue your side of the debate. Now let's give AI the opposite role and have it debate with you. And then maybe do some metacognition at the end, reflect back on maybe what arguments you need to work on strengthening that you hadn't noticed before. Or like points maybe that they raised that you didn't expect, points that you felt pretty prepared for and you can feel confident about going into an actual class debate. So that's more looking ahead to the future and what I envision.
And then picking up, so obviously we're all kind of starting at a similar place because this is new for everybody. So the first advisory lesson for the high school was pretty similar to the ones that they did at Paulson. Just dove a little bit deeper into consequences, your participation in disseminating or sharing something that is a deep fake, the role, what are the 3 steps down the road that happen to you or to your friend, or legal, there could be legal ramifications or something like that. So it got a little bit more, high school-ish for that. The other thing I loved is that in 6th grade, we're talking the word algorithm. And really, I think we're gonna end up using that word even younger with people, because it really is your profile. It's what you're showing the world, who you are by every click that you make. And that, they were introducing it now in 6th grade, but it is what every song we like, every video we watch, everything we click on, everything we stay on a reel that's on there for more time than another one, like they're giving information with everything they do. And so that's a big part of what we were trying to get across with this lesson too. So we had this little activity where they could either go to Instagram or they could go to Spotify. And they could look at kind of what they've created for themselves by what they've chosen to spend time on. And so that was revealing for some people, you know, I had were you there for the thing that I was coastal grandma? But yeah, so even like different times of the day, you'll have a different profile musically. So the kids, it was kind of in the morning when we did advisory, so they didn't have a ton of things, but later in the day, they have different words describing what their algorithm is. So that was an interesting thing. We had talked about doing that with you guys. I don't know if you want to.
How AI,
You don't have to share what comes up on your algorithm, but it literally is your algorithm. It's quite eye-opening.
Who you are to the world.
So this is,
Okay.
this is an activity that was enlightening to us as adults, as we took out our phones, we're like, what's tracking our phone? And creating an awareness with students with their phones in real time was really impactful, because there's, of course, this whole naiveness that we all share. And I know, that's right, please go ahead and try.
Okay.
All right.
So if you're on Instagram, I'll talk through it a little bit, but if you have Instagram, you can click on Instagram. And if you can't do it today, you can do it when you get home too. But then you click on the bottom right profile picture in this corner here. That your little, like it's a little circle. I try to do pictures. Gail suggested pictures, which I think is great because it's overwhelming. Then the 3 lines in the corner, click on the 3 lines in the corner. And you'll get something that says settings and activity. And then you go to content preferences, which then leads to your algorithm, which is on the top. And so when you click on your algorithm, again, you may not want to show it. Mine's funny. I laugh because I did it the other day. College admission, because my son is a senior. Baseball, the Kentucky Derby, because I was so interested in Sherry DeVoe being the first. And I've been clicking on that lately. Italian grandmother's recipes, because God knows I can't keep up with my Italian grandmother. UConn, college basketball, and family traditions are mine. So within that, so it does give exactly what you're clicking on. There's opportunities to like control it. Like, what do you want to see less of in your algorithm? You want to see more of. But at the top, it says, lately, you've been into campus tours, America's pastime, and horse racing excitement. So it gives a little that's new now. It gives a little paragraph to summarize your algorithm. So this is also, we did this with Spotify that day as well. I'm sure kids are like, ooh, and in Spotify, you'll see it will be like your recent views.
And you can put a playlist.
Yeah.
Type in the word playlist.
That's right.
And it gives you,
Gotcha.
gives you what you've been looking for at that time of day.
Pretty eye-opening. I think one of the things, using that word algorithm is super important for kids. It is creating an algorithm, and that's why you get all the pop-ups and things that you get. I mean, nowadays you can say something in your house and it's showing up on your phone if you have an Alexa. I mean, that's the reality. So they need to know that. So that was a pretty powerful lesson, I'd say.
Yeah, then the other one was very similar to Paige's, just high school level with the AI companions, and they're all over the place, the kids, as far as how much I had a bunch of kids in my advisory who were like, I never do that. Like, I would never look to. So part of it was like, what would you expect from an AI companion, and what would you want a friend to say, and why would you turn to this or whatever? And a good amount of my kids were like, I don't want to talk to an AI, about my personal stuff. But we know for sure that it's happening. The stats are great, every single month. They look Pew Research Center, they're going up all the time. So that was another one that we did with the kids.
I just like, this is how much preparation is done before advisory lessons. So this project, the whole advisory scope of grades 6 through 12, every student, we wanted to make sure they had these 2 lessons before the end of the school year. So it was just like really important for us. It was really important that every single adult approached it the same way, had the same resources, knew what to say, knew how to response. So this is how much work goes into something that they make sound really easy. Because we want 100% of our students to at least have this information direct and clear.
And there were examples of like creepy responses from AI, you know, encouraging you to do weird things, like, so they're like, so. Yeah, so let's go to the next one, so, this is where Michelle and I have been living over, so, you know, all the conversation she was talking about is how do we push this in to all of these different or what's gonna make the most sense to bring this to be useful for teachers, to not make it not realistic, you know what I mean, like it's not inorganic is what I'm trying to say. So what we, big thing that, yeah, I am heavily involved with the AP classes, and I do a lot of the ECE trainings with UConn. And just all the resources that I get, a lot of the discussion is transparency, like creating an environment of transparency. Kids are gonna use it, so how do we create a system that they are accountable for how they use it? So the AI use statement, sometimes it's called a disclosure statement, is an example of, yeah. So what we try to do is kind of give them reflecting. Yes.
Oh, that was the level, sorry.
You click right on that.
Is it, no, I'm sorry, so it must have lived through it. Oh, there it is, it's up here, sorry.
So this is my para helped us make a graphic visual of it, but we kind of came up with ways that kids could use it, and the teacher can have a discussion before even assigning this project to say, this is an acceptable way of using this tool, and this is what you are allowed to do for this project. So it's not, you know, what's happened, I think this year is a little, oh, I didn't even think they would use it like that. That's happened a lot. And so this is kind of a little bit broken down. We're gonna walk through what is acceptable for you to use, and then this is how you show us that you used it that way. So these are just examples. And really, the kids can only appropriately use Gemini right now, so we front loaded it with Gemini. And then the next thing is citing an AI prompt. So this is just a graphic organizer that we created to kind of help kids cite it when they have used an AI prompt in their schoolwork. And that's the other thing, is they're not really going to sites anymore. They're just using the AI overview. So we created one about the AI overview. That's something we're gonna have to deal with in the future.
Yeah, and where that information is coming
Yes,
from,
yeah.
and decides what goes on.
Watching their habits change in real time has been something. Like they don't even scroll down the page anymore. You know, search engine optimizers, I don't know what they're gonna do because they don't do it. They just go to that overview now. So it's really.
And those are changes that did not exist when we started in October.
Yeah.
And are in the last
Yeah,
month.
so it wasn't even open for them.
It wasn't, and so the amount of nimble teaching actions are just unbelievable in real time, and that's, you know. Don and Paige kind of watching over all of this through the library media networks and making sure that we're on top of it. And you know, I have to say Erin Fliss has been great about controlling and shutting down when we see things change. But Google is our safety network, and we know that when something changes in Google, we need to address it. We need to make sure we're on top of it. I want to thank you again for
even
being on it.
what she was talking about with the reverse image search, like that is gonna be that used to be something that maybe some people would do, right? That is gonna be a tool that you're gonna have to use if you are questioning if something is.
Or that lateral research
Yeah.
that you've been working on with them, where it's not enough just to read through the information on a website, you need to open a new tab and then research the website that you're getting the information from. And getting an understanding of what might be missing from that information, what if they have any kind of agenda, like that part too. I think is so necessary now. And we need to be doing it.
It's not a simple step.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
there's a
we
lot
found
of-
it
gotta
with
dig
an
the
image
focus.
from a,
Yes.
we went on to just I don't know, it was either one of the news sources and there was an image, and so we thought we would try this.
Yes.
And the image looked like it was a headline,
Yeah.
like an actual headline that you think you're reading today, that something happened to this man. We did
It's
a
in Russia or
reverse,
somebody get-
2022.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh, like it just was really eye-opening, cause it looked like it was something that happened today, but
Yeah.
in reality, it was something happened in 2022.
Right.
So, they'll have to be really good at doing that a lot. Yeah, oh, this is really well fun.
All right, so Leon Furs, I don't know if you,
That's part of what the board previewed.
Yeah.
okay, good, all right, so. Michelle and I were trying to translate this into student and teacher words. Like, what does this actually mean? What am I saying to a kid? When I'm saying that you are allowed to do this, and what is the skill that you are actually using to be able to use it at this level? So this was, and we did use AI to kind of help us a little bit, but this piece of work is what we did to kind of help give teachers language into what more sophisticated AI use looks like, and also to be able to talk to kids about what is acceptable AI use. So hopefully we're. The big thing this year has been, oh, I didn't even think about that. You know, you're like, okay, kids, you can use it, and then you're like, oh, I didn't really want to use it that way. You know what I mean, so we're hoping that a tool like this will help them.
We're still, yeah, it's still.
A goose.
We're in the beginning
Yeah.
stages, but this also guides us towards more complex use and higher level use when we're ready. So again, you can see we're building foundational things. We're building foundational understanding, and then we're building tools and resources for proper citation, proper use, identification of bias, and then going into kind of opening up some tasks for kids to be able to really use it appropriately before they leave us at the high school and go on to college. So, or other things.
So Elizabeth, we had an opportunity for Elizabeth Renee to come in to our school, and we were working on the level of use, and it was. We're trying very hard to find opportunities to have AI used as an analytical tool, like just the higher level of AI. How can we push that in? And we need it in classes that would be in the short experience, right? We've got civics, US history, like there's certain classes that every kid has. So I told Ben Pelletier and Laura Stott, and they both teach civics and US history, and we met with Elizabeth Renee, and I was thrilled with what came out of that. Like, we want to analyze data. We've got civics class where they have to look at a problem, any problem. It could be, the pollution or sidewalks in Madison or something like that. Like, look at data and figure out what you need to do to fix that problem. That is so hard for them sometimes, like it's just to wrap their head around it. So Elizabeth helped us come up, and they had, the teachers had kind of a framework that they would walk kids through. We took that framework that they would kind of use to walk kids through. We created a gem with that. I had created like a library guide, and it had a couple pages of resources for kids to be able to use, a research center, like all different places where you can find data, civic data. And we added that to the gem, and kids, it prompted kids, and at the end of this class, every kid had a problem they wanted to address, and were able to, like, we created the gem in a way that it wouldn't give them the answer to the problem, but it would tell them where they could go look for the answer to the problem, or go look for data. And I was really happy. That was a good moment, because it was like every kid, and you could start the prompt and say, I don't know, I have no idea. Well, how about this? It gives you 3 suggestions. Yeah, I don't like any of those. Well, how about these? Beeping and school hours and all these different things. And it really did push their thinking. So we had changed the prompt a couple times to be like, don't be so positive. Like, and it's always like, oh, you're so smart. That's such a good thing. So we were trying to like push it to push their thinking. And so that was really good. And actually, it's not up here, but Friday, I went to that Ed Advance.
Yes.
And I learned about another prompt, a research prompt that Amity was presenting. That is truly like that, you know, that conference that you have with kids when they're doing a big research paper and helping them kind of look through different lenses of things and you know, impact, you know, what's the impact on something or how to dig deeper into a topic. All of that stuff is in that prompt, and I was using it with teachers there, and it's awesome. So I saw that.
We mentioned at Advance a couple times, and they are in Litchfield. They are the leader in the state, and I think in a lot of other states around AI in education. So we've had the fortune having them several times and contracting them to not only help our teachers learn about AI, because there's a lot to learn, but also to help us to be smart about using our approach systemically and making sure that we're taking care of the social emotional things that we are concerned about first, and then really being thoughtful and mindful about making sure that the experiences that we're providing are actually growing some wisdom and understanding about AI. So they've been great partners, and they've really made themselves available to us on an ongoing basis. Today, there was a grade 8 group that was working on a grade 8 exploration together, and Matt was making himself available for helping us, and he's going to do the launch in a few weeks to the entire grade 8 class on this task, which is really doing an exploration.
Yeah, he's our expert.
Speaker, so he will actually address the grade 8 class. And the essential question was,
Is AI enhancing our abilities and giving us superpowers, or is it a strength stealer weakening our skills? Sometimes it's easy to go back to that same language again, superpower, strength stealer, and we've set up the graphic organizer that way. We're gonna give them a whole range of different resources to be analyzing. And then Matt Mervis will also serve as our expert who will speak to both sides, right? And then we're hoping to just watch their thinking grow and refine and change throughout the day, and we'll have like a starting point and an end point to better assess how that thinking has grown.
and we have done that experience for kids for 3 years in grade 8. We've had various people speak on the topic of AI. You can imagine the topic was very different. And it is now.
Sources
Yeah.
I found in September are like ancient now.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, yeah, we know about
Yeah.
that, so it's really, we had to work to find a lot of relevant current sources for this year. Yeah.
So I just wanna go back 1 second, Gail,
Oh, sure.
unless you wanna rush me off, but the other thing that Ben and Laura, play the music. The other thing that Ben and Laura were able to do from that meeting was create 2 notebook LMs, one of conservative polling data, one of liberal polling data. And so kids are in a sandbox, right? Like they're only messing with those resources, and then they would get groups and have to kind of ask questions of it to analyze that data. And I thought that was a really good use. So now that's just history, and every kid is gonna have that experience. So even just for them to have the experience of using AI as an analytical partner, like we talk about the different way clerk, colleague, coach, or whatever different ways that use AI. I think that you don't totally think of that unless you've experienced it a little bit, and I'm like, oh, that can actually help me do that kind of thinking. So I'm proud of both of those. I think I don't think they'll get outdated too soon, but we'll see what happens next year. But
Try to stay fit.
So what's next? So we have obviously coordinators are sharing their progress on almost every Friday. Gail has a coordinators meeting in here with all the different coordinators around the
Friday afternoon.
district.
Friday
afternoon. And they have been charged with, trying to implement things where they see fit, and then sharing out. And really Gail's trying to help them lead that charge and just see what's working, what's not, hearing from the kids. So we've had lots of great things that we want to share with you. We're hoping next year we can get some of these things out and show you what's going on. We keep updating the lesson templates. We've created a lesson template for AI application. And you know, Gail's asked that student work samples are put on there and also feedback, so we can really truly, here's a blank one, but you know, they're tasked with, where does the profile of a graduate fit in? What's the task design scale level? And this took time to do, Shane made it beautiful though, but then what is the standard that we're pulling from? What's the objective, the context? How are they accessing it? Through what mechanism? And then we really do want to know, how did it go? What worked? What's the student response? And even sharing samples of student work. So when the coordinators are in here on Friday, you know, Gail and I have heard a lot of cool things that are happening in the district now. It's like, how are we capturing it? How are we getting it to move forward, are the next steps, so.
And again, the push is vertical understanding. So these meetings on Friday have middle school and high school at the same table, sharing samples from the same content, including everything around and how they're thinking about refining it too. So you know, again, this is changing work. It's all anchored in the profile of a graduate capacities. We're really mindful that that is the real gem in all of this, is that our kids have to hang on to and develop those profile of a graduate capacities. But it's very exciting. And I'm kind of amazed at how far we are. I mean, I really wondered if we could give the board any kind of an update, but thanks to everybody's you know, willingness to take risk and grow themselves, we have some really good things that we've done. And good things that we've done with them. I'm gonna pause here before we go on to our next topic, because my experts probably want to go home. But do you have any questions for the team, or we want to refer?
Couple.
Sure.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So like really great work, and obviously it's already stated that there's a lot of agility on your part involved, and so really want to recognize that. One thing I've been hearing from some parents, particularly at Polson, is that sometimes there's an assumption that all kids have phones or social media and they don't. And I think, you know, there is a bit of a sea change, and I think, you know, as younger grades come up, there will be fewer with that. So I think that's just something to keep in mind, that it's not a universal experience for all of our students. And then the other, you know, comment I would just make is that I think it would be helpful I know that this is specifically on AI, and that's a really important skill, just as going to original sources and reading the original source is an important skill, just as being able to like write an essay in a blue book without the assistance of AI or anything is an important skill. And so I think it would be very helpful and important to keep an eye like across the curriculum of how many assignments are using AI, how many are drawing on other skills. Just because it's so easy to turn to AI for everything. And even if it's not explicitly part of the assignment, I think students are often doing it you know, like, I'm reading this book, AI, give me the summary so that I don't have to read it in depth or whatever, right? And so I think it's helpful kind of curriculum wide to just note the percentage of assignments that are around AI versus other skills that are really important.
We had an interesting little experience, which I think you'll find interesting, that I was working with, I think it's the Spanish, it was Jenny Bootsy, and it was the seniors team Spanish. And we had written the disclosure statement in Spanish for them, and it was gonna give them, because they read these journals, like 30-page journal articles, and they have to have peer-reviewed articles, like we're making them do our thing. So we were giving them the opportunity to have those articles summarized for them, or have, you know, see and help you navigate those articles. Not one kid did it. Not one kid did it in that whole class. Not one of them used AI for anything. We were like, yeah, we could do this, we could do that. Not one of them wanted to do it. So there is this obviously maturity level with different kids and how much they care about their own learning or whatever, which is just, you know, we've got those kids that are like, go ahead, write the paper for me, but there is a good amount of kids that are like, no, I'm gonna learn this, or I don't wanna touch it, or the environment is gonna be impacted by it, like, it is not just widely used by everybody all the time, like it is.
I think that's great, and that's such a powerful example, and I just wanna make sure that 10 years from now, that cohort of 12th graders feels the same way, and
Yeah.
the environment that they're growing up in will be so different than this
Yeah.
cohort. So how do we
Yeah.
continue to instill that, yes, AI is a helpful shortcut, and like nothing. You know, there's nothing like using your own brain
Yeah.
to really.
I will say at the middle school level, from what I see, because I work with a lot of the different disciplines. So much of it is based on process, where like they're working together with a class on, okay, today we're working on developing thesis statements, okay? And you're gonna build a graphic organizer, and it's happening in class on paper. A lot of kids are turning to paper or on a doc. So I think there's less of a, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but there's less of a feeling of, oh no, my paper's due tomorrow and I've done nothing. And now I'm gonna turn to AI as a shortcut. It's really more about the process, and they're doing a lot of that heavy lifting in the classroom. At least from what I'm seeing, which I would hope to see.
Yeah,
And we are, so at this point, I mean, we're highlighting the examples that we have. There's obviously 99% non-examples. Because our curriculum is developed for hands-on, minds-on learning, so that's part of our design is performance-based assessments. This is a layer that is actually in the curriculum cycle because we want to be mindful that we have learning going on instead of just doing the thing. We're using the tool and making sure that they're getting that, but I do think it's important to be mindful of that all the time, because we don't want, just in the way we've done levels of thinking and depth of knowledge, remember how we did that in the retreat? We want to make sure that kids are still hitting those higher level thinking skills, and they won't get there if they're only using AI as an instrument. So it's always been a value with us, and you know, I certainly monitor the assessments that we're doing for that higher level. And it's part of our curriculum design. Like if it doesn't get up there, it doesn't go to you. It doesn't go to you in those assessments. And that's, to me, is the way to monitor that. Because if we're hitting that low stuff all the time, then we've lost. We've lost.
I think one of the things, and I agree with Jessica, that, you know, you 3 years from now, we're not even gonna be calling it AI. There's gonna be products out there that people just use,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, like people use Alexa. It's just like part of your household equipment now that, you know, you just say, oh, it's gonna be called Ask Me Anything or whatever. And kids are gonna grow up using this the way that my kids were learning how to use, you know, tablets. You know, and they were so advanced and more than their parents, because they could use tablets and, you know, the challenge, one of the big challenges is gonna be the SEL has to be more than just about you can get yourself in trouble. It has to be about self-regulation, recognizing your own capacity to overuse, when and how to limit yourself. And then, you know, maybe even a more positive outlook. Rather than the negativity of you can get yourself in trouble, which is absolutely important for them to learn, especially kids in school who, you know, exchange pictures and stuff, and, you know, can get themselves in trouble. But the positive aspects of, if you learn to self-govern and to use this properly, you will be head and shoulders above a lot of people in the workplace, in college, in, you know, whatever career, because not only will you be able to leverage AI to make yourself more efficient, make yourself more less expendable in the workplace, but you'll also bring a much more positive and polished product when it's been tested by, you know, fact checking and looking at other sources and reliable sources and all that stuff. So, you know, your bosses will come to you knowing that, you're a credible user of technology rather than just, a lazy user or whatever. And then another thing that I think is gonna be really key here is professional development has to be ongoing. And it's gonna be more important with AI education than it ever has been for specific subjects and disciplines. Because teachers come prepared from learning math and learning English and learning science, right? But especially in this transitional period, teachers don't come to school with an automatic, with the vocabulary, with the understanding, with the, and it's the age old story where the kids are getting ahead of, or kids can get ahead of the teachers if we're not really careful and deliberate about advancing professional development so that all of our teachers really have a good foundation in this. So, but great work. This is amazing. It's wonderful to see our district being out ahead of the curve. But at the same time, that places a responsibility on us to make sure we do it responsibly and we do a good job. And not just the easy job. And it's wonderful to see that you guys already understand that this isn't a static target, right? We are learning and we come here a lot of times, and the presentation we got today in a curriculum committee meeting, you'd often be like, do these guys even know what they're talking about? They keep saying, well, we're just learning this, we're just learning, but that's what this is. It's great that you guys come to us admitting that we're learning new stuff every day, because if you don't admit that and know it and understand the moving target aspect of it, then, you're developing lesson plans for, 3 years ago.
And don't jump on
And
every
you're not helping the
bandwagon
kids.
too,
What?
like, don't jump on every
Yeah.
bandwagon too, like
Exactly.
picking and choosing where it's gonna be.
Yeah, exactly.
And teaching it in together with media balance and the SEL
Yeah.
components
Yeah.
you mentioned, like we absolutely are doing that. Especially through those guidance lessons I mentioned at all 3 grade levels at Polson. With 8th grade, we just watched it's like a 2-minute video. It's a split screen. On one side, the girl is keeping balance in her life. She does use her laptop for work, but then she takes a walk. She engages in meditation. She makes herself an actual meal. And then on the right, it's her same exact day. But if she's constantly scrolling on her phone and not taking breaks and what that looks like. And the kids have so much to say about that. And as long as we're making them aware of how much you're using this, in what capacities, even as the brands kind of come and go and the Alexas and the whatever, but to realize, okay, like they're tailoring content for me. Am I paying attention to that? And am I also paying attention to what I'm using technology for and how often throughout the day?
And
That's the gold.
Yeah.
To me, that's the real thing.
And
And hard to
there's real opportunity here to help cure what the huge rift in society right now, because as you're teaching AI and you're teaching the concepts of, fact checking, questioning the responses you're getting, you're also teaching concepts like confirmation bias and that sort of thing. And this is a real opportunity to challenge your confirmation bias, to learn the devil's advocate or the other side of the argument. And you can do it quickly, you can learn, and it expands your mind to understand where other viewpoints are coming from. So, I think that's another important SEL aspect of AI education. Thank you guys, amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly welcome to stay if you want to hear about progress reports. And Michelle, you may want to stay. Yeah. She was so close to getting it. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
So, district-wide progress reports, as our school buildings merged and changed last year. Of course, we look at all systems and we look at what improvements we can make. We also have made quite a few curricular revisions over the years since our last iteration of progress reports. So I think it was about 7 years ago that we went through our first major change in progress reports. And at that point, the teachers were doing a narrative and really not looking at standards and not really looking at grade level expectations. So it was a very friendly report card, but not very informative. And we had a huge committee of all different stakeholders that met a million days. I don't know. I feel like I've been in this windowless room way too many years. But it was really the consensus and the wisdom of that group to move to a standards-based report card, which we did do, which was based on grade level and content standards. So it was our first iteration of doing that. In looking at our system now as a pre-K through grade 5 school system, we also recognize that our pre-K classrooms did not have progress reports. So we were not reporting to those parents about the standards for 3 to 4 year olds and 4 to 5 year olds. And that was an improvement that we also wanted to make. So we hit a couple different priorities. We wanted to still maintain the clarity and the transparency of student achievement. And we also wanted to make sure that we were aligning with standards and we were giving parents a real understanding and roadmap of their journey. So in this iteration, we brought together a large group. We did it for over the past 3 months. We looked at grade levels, every single grade level, every single content area, representation from both schools. And we really looked at vertical alignment after each meeting. So we did work within the context of this room and really looking at what the standards were. And then we took a step back, put together drafts, and Michelle was a huge part of this, lining up everything vertically and saying, what story does it tell a parent as they're watching their child progress through the levels? So it was over 51 teachers, coaches, and principals involved in taking a look at this. And then we also made improvements, iterations over time. And then I met with the PTO leadership teams from both Brown and Neck River to give them the same presentation and give them more information and take some suggestions from them. And we also were looking at different ways that we delivered that information. So here's an example of the improvements that we made. When we did our first iteration of the progress reports, when we went from a narrative to a standards-based system, we tried to make our language really parent friendly. And in doing so, we kind of stripped the standard and we stripped the parents' understanding exactly of how the standards change and grow through each grade level. So this is a really good example of it, where you can see there's an unevenness in this particular standard with the crossed out language, trying to be a little too parent friendly and not be specific and really looking at what the grade level expectations were. So now a parent can see a familiar progression of skills. In addition to that, you can see the same thing happened in math, where we tried to friendly a standard, but we also lost the rigor of the standard in doing that. So we made the same kinds of improvements so parents could see those progressions. We also took a look at our scale, and one of the struggles that we had in the old scale is that we would say that a student was strong in a particular area, and then the content or the unit would change. And the next unit, maybe they weren't strong in, maybe they were just meeting expectations, or they were developing and then strong. And we found through looking at examples across the state that there was a really better scale that we could adopt that talked about what the trimester was. So we could then put it in the context of really appreciating where the student was in the standard within the context of the trimester and the units. So then it was a little bit clearer to parents as they read that this was something my child connected with. This telling time was really a strength for my kid, but now we've moved on to units of measurement and they're meeting trimester benchmarks. So they could see kind of where the meaning was in that scale.
I think that's a really important point, because that had been an issue before where either a teacher was maybe reticent to give the strength because we wouldn't know what's ahead, and you could see that dip later, and then might be a difficult conversation with a parent. So that, the move to the trimester piece is really important. I think it's gonna give us an accurate read of where the student is and a better relationship, clearer situation for family. And we want to give parents information where they can help their child to improve, they know where they're at, so.
So you can see clarity of language was really something we went after in all of these meetings. We made very few changes to work habits and social development. We just really kind of looked at what we could really be objective about indicating. So we made some slight refinements there. And then the capacities, we keep going back to profile of a graduate, that's a big deal. And we had only generally commented on profile of the graduate down at the end of the report card. So it wasn't tied to analyzing in mathematics when we emphasized analyzing, design and science. So now we're having a capacity linked to the content, and the capacity would be indicated under the content. So again, a little bit clearer, more aligned with our curriculum and our development. We've done a lot of work since the first report card iteration. There were some content areas we didn't have curriculum for, so now we do. And they're all aligned to profile the graduate, that POG. And we also looked, and I know I'm out of time, so I'm rushing, I'm sorry. We also looked and we asked parents for a lot of feedback on this, because we have been using Infinite Canvas across the system for absences, also for reporting progress. And the two parent groups in both schools were totally united. They really felt that printouts would be a waste of time, energy, and paper. And they said for those individuals who are not using Infinite Campus to access the progress reports, that it would be something where we would maybe send them a one-page reminder of how to log on, and make sure that we were also kind of reaching out to them individually. There's not that many, and they felt that if we created paper copies that most people would throw it out because they made their own, or they also have more online presence. So that was something very helpful for us. They also appreciated all the clarity, the indicators, it made sense to them. So they were very appreciative. The two building principals really worked hard on creating common expectations for the comment area, which can be the Wild West, and really outlining for teachers what they expected to see. We have the good fortune of having two building administrators that read every single progress report before they go home. So it takes them a lot of time and energy, and they want to see, again, clear messages. Related arts are expected to comment on every child before the end of the year, but because they sometimes see 300-400 kids, they can't comment every trimester, but they will do comments. So we don't do drop-down comments in our K through 5. And then the pre-K, we actually have standards-based progress reports for our pre-K students as well, which is we did one iteration this year. It was way too general, and we made an improvement. They will be reported on 3 times next year using these same standards that are appropriate for their disciplines. And that was a huge piece. And I just want to make sure that the board also recognizes that we also offer conferences in person, which is another chance to clarify anything on the progress report. So our next step would be to develop guidelines for teachers to use. We want consistency in those indicators. So as we were talking about assessments earlier, we map the assessments to the indicators. So every 3rd grade teacher is using the right assessments to align to the standards and looking at making the judgments the same way. We do it in all disciplines. It's kind of a heavy lift, but it is really helpful in making sure that across the system, we're being equitable about how we look at students, how we look at standards, and elevating the same amount of rigor and evidence to it. So, 1 minute passed. Happy to take any questions, and I know our meetings tight, but if you want to email me, I'll respond to that too.
It's a lot of work and presented very quickly, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, yeah, that was great.
If you want to adjourn.
Oh, we are adjourned at 6:01. Thank you.